It's 6 o'clock in South Africa and 6 p.m. as well at Vatican City, where the Catholic faithful have gathered as the Roman Catholic Church's cardinals have gone into conclave this evening to elect a successor for the late Pope Francis, who passed away on Easter Monday.
And of course, we saw the cardinals earlier on making that procession there to the Sistine Chapel, and that is where they are all going to have this moment. And importantly, right, it is also where they got to make their individual oaths also as a collective. And this is an oath that is very solemn, an oath that promises that they're going to keep this particular process as private as possible, but also the fact that whoever they choose as the leader of the Catholic Church is going to be as a result of an inspiration from the Holy Spirit, and also ensuring that they're choosing the man that the Lord will definitely want to lead the church.
And by the way, it is, as I was saying, 6 p.m. Welcome to a special edition of The Full View on SABC News. Much of our coverage over the next 60 minutes or more possibly will be dedicated to the election of a new pope. The church at the moment will be waiting to see how those cardinals decide. Will they, for example, come out with a pope who will follow in the footsteps of Pope Francis, or will it be a departure in terms of what he represented, both in terms of inclusion in the church and the other positions? What you're looking at now is what's going to be a very significant shot in the coming hours, possibly. That is the chimney from where we will see either black or white smoke to indicate whether a pope has been elected. When we see black smoke, that means the cardinals will have to go into another vote tomorrow morning, the first one of the day. But if we get white smoke, that would then mean they've come to a decision and a successor for Pope Francis has been chosen.
And the cardinals, including the 133 aged under 18, will vote in the conclave. They filed into the basilica to choral music, and it's quite a moment, right, to behold, because they also, as they made their procession, were singing the litany of the saints. And this goes far back to the saints that we read about even in the Bible. And this is a moment that is seen by a lot of them as quite important, because they're talking about how they're connecting that process, even as the church has gone through different changes over the years. They're saying that this is still part of the basis of their process. And of course, a conclave, as we know, is a private meeting, of course, of Roman Catholic cardinals. They're secluded right now, no access to the outside world. They don't have their cell phones. Signals have been jammed, and they will be then continuously choosing their pope. There will be quite a number of votes. We know that each cardinal will have one vote. He'll say a prayer just before he puts it in the box, and that also signals how, for him, this moment is all about the guidance of the Holy Spirit.
And before we move on, perhaps a bit of history that we can bring to you as we continue to watch these images of not just Catholic faithful, it must be said, gathered at Vatican City, but many tourists, because it is a very popular tourist attraction, are already gathered there. Many of them are willing to wait the election of a new pope out for hours. Some are willing to camp out there for days, if that's how it's going to take, how long it's going to take. And on that point, by the way, the vote to elect a new pope has been held in the Sistine Chapel since the 15th century. In 2023, when Pope Francis was elected, that took about 5 rounds of voting. Now, disagreements can make the process longer. We don't often know what the points of contention were until we are told who the cardinals have decided should lead the Roman Catholic Church. It's a significant story across the world when you consider the size, of the church. More than 1 billion people are followers of the Catholic faith.
And of course, Tembegile, you speak about the world, right? The late Pope Francis opened the church, now choosing cardinals from 71 countries. It speaks about a diversity of voices. It also speaks about the difference that, the cardinals would then have been exposed to in terms of the setups, Tembegile, because you have cardinals from the developed world, you have cardinals from the developing world, you have cardinals who agreed with the late Pope Francis, you have cardinals who certainly were not much in favor of opening up of the church.
religious or not, it's quite a sight to behold, even as you look at these images, right? The wonder of Vatican City and all that it represents to those more than 1 billion people who are waiting to see how this will pan out. In Africa, this is the continent where the church is seeing, in fact, at the moment, its biggest amount of growth in terms of people who are becoming Catholic faithful, and there are already names of potential, well, not candidates, but people whose names have been thrown out there by the media in terms of likely leaders. But as we know, it's a race that is wide open. Anyone could come out of this process who's in that room as the next pope.
And it could go either way, as some of those who are watching the developments there have said. And you look at Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana, aged 76, because remember, it's quite important that you mention the age there as well, that the cardinals that are eligible to vote and are part of this process have to be below the age of 80. And the Cardinal Peter Turkson, the current position, Chancellor of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and the Pontifical Academy of Social Science, is known as a diplomatic cardinal and has been described as a man with extensive leadership experience, in particular with the environment, entering a seminary in Ghana at the age of 14, studying in New York and Rome before being appointed the Archbishop of Ghana in 1993 and named a cardinal by Pope John Paul II in 2003. And then you also, of course, look at Cardinal Fridolin Basungu from the DRC, aged 65, current position, Archbishop of Kinshasa, president of the Symposium of Episcopal Conferences in Africa as well as Madagascar, and has spoken up for African Catholics but earned the ire of President Felix Tshisekedi for criticizing the DRC government and advocating against the exploitation of natural resources. Tabegile.
Again, as you'll see those words on your screen, reflecting just how significant a tradition this is, a process this is for the church. Whoever is elected will be the 267th Pontiff. And that person will then be tasked, possibly until their last days, with seeing through responsibility, care for the Roman Catholic Church and all that it stands for. When you look at what Bongi was referencing, the issue of age, people under the age of 80, these cardinals who will be in the room are all under the age of 80. They will then make a decision. 133 cardinals in the room. 108 of them were in fact appointed by Pope Francis from when he took over the papacy back in 2013. Majority of them, in fact more I should say of them, come from Asia, South America and Africa.
And of course, Tabegile, when you speak about the cardinals, right, and the relationships that we would see in the dynamics over time, you've got Cardinal Raymond Burke, for example, from the United States, and his current position is that of Cardinal Priest of Saint Agata de Gotti. Now, he is regarded by the critics as an outspoken traditionalist, and we've seen him publicly clashing with Pope Francis's more liberal philosophies, particularly regarding the Pope Francis's willingness to allow divorced and remarried couples to receive the Eucharist. So you can see that as they go into the conclave, there are some Tabegile who have a bit more reserved and conservative views, as has been described by some traditionalists, as have been called by others, and others who simply say the church needs to continue on its more inclusive approach.
Let's step away for the moment from the visuals that we're getting out of Vatican City. We'll come back to that story, as I was saying right at the top of the hour, that much of our coverage will be dedicated to the process that begins tonight to elect a successor for Pope Francis.